Hey gang, Lester Smith here with another low budget studio solo adventure session. And today I'm going to try something that I've never done before, which is to run a published adventure that I know all the secrets about, but my characters do not. Running it just the way I would run it for a group of friends. Now, today's adventure is a pamphlet adventure from Crooked Staff Publishing, and this is called Thorfinn's Tomb. And as you can see, there's a keyed map here. And then inside are numbered paragraphs. There's a little bit of background I'll read in a moment. More numbered paragraphs and some additional information that kind of fleshes out the adventure. And I'll have links in the description below for this and any other stuff that you might be interested in. Now, this is a generic systemless adventure that you adapt to whatever system you are happiest with. In my case, I'm going to be using D6xD6 Dungeons, and I'm setting it within the Bauner Coast to account for the characters that I'm going to be using. This, as you can see, is a book for keeping trading card games in, and I like to use it for keeping my character cards in. So we've got some Bookmark No HP RPG ones, and D-Force here in the middle. Regular D6xD6 here, and the bookmark character sheets for D6xD6 Dungeons. So here's my party. And I have statted out the monsters for this adventure. And character sheets are ready to go. Now, this being a fantasy dungeon adventure, I thought I'm just going to go whole hog. So I'm using a couple of characters from back in the early 80s. I'm going to use miniatures that I painted back in the 80s. So here is Raydell Pinehaven. He is an AD&D second edition character originally, the first character I remember ever playing. Secondarily, Will, who is a Pictish thief, and I designed him for the fantasy trip. This figure was painted just for the love of painting. I'm going to use him for Cooper, who is a copper statue from the D6xD6 Dungeons system. Originally, he was an assassin, because who's going to expect a statue, right? And then he ran away because he figured after the assassination was done, they were going to disassemble him, and he wants to live. And then finally, this figure is again from AD&D second edition, was originally Mistress Goldleaf, a full elf. I'm going to use her for a character called Vigian Lorette. So her name is Lorette, but she is a necromancer, and in D6xD6 Dungeons Bauner Coast, necromancers are not necessarily evil. They're magicians who have a lot of respect for the spirits of the dead, and sometimes will ask them for favor, especially information. Some evil ones do bind dead spirits into skeletons or mummies or just dead flesh to make a zombie. Now, the other thing, when I said whole hog, is, sorry for the coin, that I'm going to use some battle books that I never thought I would get a chance to, because this is a sort of thing that we would have used back in the 80s for the adventures we ran back then. These are two small booklets that came with full-sized sets, and you can see a still photo of some of those there. Why do I have these? because they are gorgeous, and my wife said, yes, go ahead and back their Kickstarters. Now for the monsters, I have pulled out some cardboard characters. These are what we used mainly back in the day. You may have seen them before, and these are available nowadays on the Steve Jackson Games website as downloadable print and play PDFs. They're designed to be folded over. There's a front and there's a back, and then tape or glue the base together. The problem I found with this in storing them is that sometimes they get a little bit crushed. Like this female knight, who was one of the characters included in an adventure in Space Gamer magazine. So what we did instead, after a bit, was to just fold them flat and glue them together and then put them on these bases. And actually, they were sold this way as well. And I'm going to show you just how ridiculously overboard I went with these, which is to say, I bought every set that there was in existence. And besides those ones that are folded over, here's my main collection. And you can see I separated these out by type. There's warriors and heroes, there's elves, there's townspeople, there's undead, there's dragons, there's all kinds of things. And I don't know where I got this, but I love this Ronald McDonald, so I use him as a giant just for ridiculousness' sake. I've never actually used him in an adventure. I'm not that crazy. For dice, I am using some DoubleDice that I kickstarted years ago, shortly after having funded the original D6xD6 rules. And you know, I love Black Oak Workshop dice, so I'm going to be using D6s out of this. This particular set is their stand-up arcade advent calendar. And you can see there's, if you've ever done stand-up arcades, there's a one-player, two-player button for a two-sided die. Here's another one, and this is like the tokens that they used to sell 6 for $1, usable only in those machines. So I need 6-siders. There's a set of stars. There's an eyeball with the number of rays around it are what number you rolled. This is kind of cool. So there's a, you rolled a 4. This is, you rolled a 1, game over. Or high score, you rolled a 6. And magic sword. Set the rest of these aside. And the last thing, you know how much I like the GameMaster's Apprentice as well. This happens to be their fantasy deck. And for this adventure, I'm going to use it as the Oracle to make character decisions when I'm not exactly sure how they would handle things. Okay, so let's get the first of the maps out here. And actually, first, let me read the background to this adventure. The Ghoul King, an ancient terror from a previous age, has arisen once more and must be destroyed before regaining his full strength. As such, the players have been tasked with the retrieval of Thorfinn's trident. Now, I'm going to call this Thorfinn's hammer because I'm going to consider Thorfinn as a dwarf in one of the ruins in the Dverheim mountain range. As such, the players have been tasked with the retrieval of Thorfinn's hammer from that former hero's tomb, it being one of the few weapons capable of destroying the undead menace and preventing him from rising again for the next 100 years. Knowing this, the Ghoul King has already dispatched 2 of his cruel minions to keep watch upon the tomb in advance of his own arrival. And then there's an italicized note here about converting to your system that a skilled character should have about a 70% chance of succeeding at an easy test, 50% normal test, 30% of a hard test, and I'm going to translate that into D6x D6 stats as we go. All right, the entrance passage. Let's get room number 1 out here, the entrance. And now here it is on the map. As you can see, entrance, there's this key right here says at 1A, there is a ghoul hiding behind a huge wall of stones and old bones in area 2. And so the entrance passage. It says the entrance to the tomb is unmarked and looks much like any other cave opening. Once inside, and as the PCs draw near to 1A, there's a chance that they might spot, with a hard test, a ghoul hiding behind a huge wall of old bones and loose stones in area 2. That's the pile, area 2, assuming they have a light source or are able to see in the dark. Now, these map books came with static cling decorations, and in this case, I have added a little bit of corridor here where it would have been a dead end, and I'm using this to show the ledge, and so the bones and stuff will be up here. And as you can see, I'm considering this to be this hidden entrance. We got a little bit of corridor. The book has a little decoration here. Looks like a sacrificial stone or a table. We can ignore that other than for flavor. One of the reasons I'm using the small books instead of the large ones, not only that they fit on the table, but also when you look at these squares, the Thorfinn's Tomb Adventure calls these 5 feet across. D6x D6 Dungeons would call this 2 meters, so more like 7 feet, but that's close enough for my purposes. So I'm thinking Raydell, leader of the group, is going to come in here. Twill, the thief, is going to come in next to him. We'll put Cooper behind him because Twill doesn't have that much combat ability. So he's carrying that big axe, which I fashioned by hand. And then we will put Lorette back here. Now, I think I forgot to mention when I was describing the way that necromancers work in D6x D6 Dungeons, Bauner Coast setting, she's an acolyte of Vigia the Damned, who is sort of, well, he's an underworld god. Again, not evil. He's a guardian of the dead, both good and bad. So those who are in his paradise and those who are condemned to the outer wastes. Okay, so enough for the Vigian Lorette. Where is my ghoul? I picked this one out for the Ghoul King, and there's going to be an enslaved spirit of a warrior that we'll run into later. For the ghouls themselves, I had a lot of choices in the cardboard heroes, but I ended up going with this male because he's using a thigh bone, and this female because it looks like she's gnawing on some human-sized drumstick. So we're going to put the male ghoul up here. Set these off to the side. And here is Raydell's character sheet. And Twill's. And Cooper's. And Lorette's. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but all of the important stats and stuff for D6x D6 Dungeons are on the back of this bookmark. And then I'm using regular bookmark character sheets for the monsters. We don't need Lenora the Spirit yet, and we don't need the Ghoul King until the end. So I have the two ghouls statted out here, sharing the same sheet. All right, here's where I begin role-playing as if I were the characters. And starting with the leader, Raydell. I think they're going to need a light source, so he's carrying the sword, of course. In his other hand, we'll figure that he has a torch. And I think they would pause at the entrance to see if they hear anything. So let's roll for a twill. He's the one with the best hearing. Though come to think of it, as a half-elf, Raydell also has a bonus on alertness, +1. Cooper's not going to be listening, not his style. He's just going to trust the others. There's Twill. And Lorette, I think she's just trying to get a feeling for the nature of the tomb. So I'm not going to roll for her either. These are player decisions rather than GameMaster decisions. So let's see, 2 times 5 is a 10. Twill has a focus of 7 with alertness. If you're not familiar with D6xD6 system, here basically is it. You have a single number here. It's the only attribute. It's based on how many focused skills, your best things, that you've chosen. And with these, you're trying to roll equal to or above that number. Then you have some unfocused skills. These are things that are secondary to you. And in that case, you're trying to roll this number or below. Any other skills are considered unknown, and you're rolling just below that number. And actually, before looking at skills, you're going to look at the character's vocation first. Now, in this case, I'm assuming that alertness is not necessarily part of a burglar's repertoire, so I put it down as a skill. Now, if you think about it for just a second, the lower this number, the more chance that you're going to succeed with your vocation or your focused skills, and the less chance you're going to have at succeeding with unfocused or unknown things. So Lorette, with a 10, is very much a jack of all trades. She's got about a 50-50 chance when you look at the odds chart link below. If you succeed with a focused skill, though, there's a chance of having better effect. Cooper is very much focused on his few abilities here. Fist, which I'm treating as a club. He does have some literacy. Searching is an ability. Sneaking, oddly enough, and I have an asterisk that says when he's well oiled, he moves very slowly. And wayfinding. So finding himself around the countryside. So finding his way around the countryside or crowded city streets or whatever. He has an unfocused skill of bindings magic, which I figured is sort of a healing ability for him, because as he takes damage, he's going to need to get those gears back into position and seal up his copper exterior. I guess I could have made that some sort of blacksmithing, but I like the idea of it being the one magical ability he has, which is tied to his magical nature. I also have a note down here that says he can't open his fists. So he's good at punching things, but he can't pick stuff up, or at least small stuff. Okay, so I said twill, focus of 7. With a 12, that's a success, and you actually add 1 point for the tens digit, so a 12 is a 1. He has 2 successes. So let me back up just 1 second about this dice roll. This being a difficult action to try to hear this far into the cavern entrance, I'm going to consider this, at this range, I'm going to consider this a formidable task. So there's a 2-point penalty to it. So I rolled a 3 times 5. 2-point penalty takes that 3 down to a 1. Becomes a 1 times 5 is a 5, which is not equal to or above his focus number. So Twill fails to hear anything ahead. Let's see about Raydell. His focus is 7. And I've got a 1 times 5. 2-point penalty takes that 1 down to a 1, which is minimum, so he fails with a 5. Lorette is trying to get a sense of the crypt itself up ahead, and she has a focus of 10. I'm going to consider this the same sort of roll, and I've got a 5 times a 6. So taking that 5, the lower of the numbers, down to a 3 times 6 is an 18, which is above her focus number. So she succeeds at sensing that there's something amiss up ahead, that the spirits are disturbed, which, considering we've got a ghoul with a whole mound of bones and stones together, and certainly up there sucking the marrow out of something, I would assume that the spirits are indeed disturbed. Now, what's she going to make of that? And here's where we turn to the Oracle, because I'm not sure how I would roleplay her reaction, other than we should take caution moving ahead. Something is amiss. So is she going to step forward? So I do think that she would want to move to the fore and probably ask Raydell to step back so that she and Twill are better positioned to see what's coming. And we'll move them cautiously forward a couple of steps before giving them another chance to hear something or sense something. Does the ghoul sense them? Well, the ghoul is lying in wait. And let's use these 2 dice for him, and we're just going to make this a flat roll with no modifiers. Ghoul has a focus of 9. And I've got a 4 times a 5 is a 20. So indeed, that's a success plus 2 for the 20. The ghoul is perfectly prepared, perfectly silent, waiting for them to reach this area right here. So I'm not even going to give them a chance to roll to see if they notice the ghoul. We'll have them just move up to here where the trap will be sprung. And the ghoul is going to wait one more turn until all 4 of them are up here within range of the avalanche he's going to try to start. So I suppose, yeah, let's give them one more roll, but we're going to make it impossible for everyone except Lorette, who has that sense going in, so we're going to make her a formidable one again. And I'm just going to lay these out in order. So first we have Lorette. She got a 2. With that modifier, can't take it any lower than that. So she fails to notice anything. Twill got a 2, dropped down to a 1 times 4, so he failed. Cooper got a 1 times a 5, so taking that down to a 1. Now the interesting thing is that Cooper does not have alertness as a skill. He doesn't even have it unfocused, so that becomes unknown. So actually trying to roll under that focus of 6, he did succeed. Cooper knows something is about to happen. And Raydell, I got a 2 times a 5 and drops that down to a 1. So he got a 5. And Raydell does not have alertness as a skill per se, but he does have it as a result of being a half-elf. So he's treating that as a focused skill. With the 7, he fails as well. Cooper is the only one who knows something is coming. Now, I kind of think that if I were just a player and didn't know what's ahead, that playing Cooper, I would try to shove the rest of them out of the way as I leap ahead to take the brunt of whatever's coming. I think the odds are good of that. We're going to let the cards decide. And odds good says yes. So Cooper tries to leap forward. And I think he's just giving Twill a hefty shove. So let's see if Twill manages to stay on his feet and go with the push. He has athletics as a focused skill. And a 3 times a 5. We're just doing that flat up. There's no modifier. So he does succeed, and I think he rolls with the acrobatics and comes up on his feet right here. Cooper had moved into the way. Lorette doesn't know what's happening. Radel doesn't know what's happening other than Cooper just shoved Twill out of the way. And now we're going to go into combat. So, declaration of intent. Radel and Lorette actually have no intent because they don't know what's going on, so I'm going to treat this as an alertness roll for each of them. Cooper knows something's up, so I think he's taking a battle stance, ready to strike whatever comes out of the shadows. And because he doesn't know for sure, we'll give him a 1-point penalty for that. Same thing with Twill. He doesn't know what direction this is coming from. All he knows is that his buddy Cooper is alarmed. And the ghoul, of course, is trying to push this avalanche down on top of them. And I'm going to give him a +1, just because I feel it. So again, we'll do these we'll line these up in order kind of as it came out on the table. And there's the ghoul. Next thing about D6 by D6 is what I like to call one roll to rule them all, which in other words means that the number you rolled is in effect your initiative. It's your turn order starting high and counting down. It's also whether you succeed or fail, as you saw, and how much you succeed or fail, as you saw. So what do we have here? We have Twill with a 4 times 6, and I said a 1-point penalty, so with an 18 is when he is going. We have Radel. Actually, we have Cooper next, and a 1-point penalty gives him he's trying to roll high, so that gives him a 4, which he's going to fail at. And we have a 4 times 4 for Lorette, -1 for that penalty. Gives her a 12, which is good. So she knows what's coming and turns to face it. She hears all the bones and stones rattling. She hears the disturbance of the dead in her head. So she knows that they're about to be attacked. Radel fails at a 2 versus his focus of 7. And then the ghoul succeeded at a 9. So I'm going to put the bookmarks in order of number. We've got Twill at an 18 is going first. Then we have our 4 here for Cooper. That sounds like that's going to be toward the end. We have a 12 for Lorette. That looks like she's coming right after 12. We have Radel with a 2. That's actually coming even after Cooper. And the ghoul is coming in here with the 9 just after Lorette. So Twill, successful, manages to avoid being buried in the avalanche and spots the ghoul up above. Lorette, same thing, and she's going to be preparing a necromantic spell. She's not exactly sure how to shape it yet, but I think that she is going to use the assist intent. She's going to ask the spirits to assist one of her allies. Cooper gets buried in the avalanche, even as huge as he is, and the ghoul goes next, pushing the avalanche down on top of them. Cooper, who failed, gets buried at this point, and Raydell is sort of out of range of the avalanche. But he did fail, so I'm going to say some loose things go underfoot, and he slips and falls as well. He's just not buried. Next turn, intense. What does the adventure say that the ghoul is going to do next? It is the ledge, which is area 2, which we don't really need to pull out at the moment because we're just dealing with the bones here. A single ghoul lurks in this area whose plan it is to push the aforementioned bones and stones down into area 1A and thus hamper the PC's approach. In order to avoid this grisly avalanche, anyone caught in the area will need to make an easy test to jump clear and avoid being half buried, i.e. rendered immobile. Well, I've already decided how I would handle that as a game host. However, before the dust settles, the ghoul will leap down and assail the closest non-elf character, the commotion from which will also draw the second ghoul from area 4. And also note that anyone attempting to climb up to the ledge will need to make a normal test in order to do so. Well, as far as my heroes are concerned, they're being attacked by a single ghoul. I may allow them a sort of passive ability to realize that the next ghoul is running to join this one as a fourth part of the one roll to rule them all. And we'll explain that in a moment. But for right now, this ghoul, secondary ghoul, is at space 4. Maybe we should read about room 4. The ghoul lair. If not encountered elsewhere, the second ghoul can be found in this area gnawing on old bones. To the north, behind several fallen stones, is a secret passage of sort, made by the ghouls, and which is easy to discover, though only a small character or one of the ghouls will be able to squeeze through, requiring an easy test to avoid getting stuck. Alternatively, a particularly strong character may attempt a normal test to clear the path sufficiently for a larger creature to try a similar thing. Okay, that's all we know about room 4, so I am going to assume that the female ghoul is right here where the 4 is, and in order to get over here is going to have to run. Now, in D6xD6 Dungeons, you can move 1 square, 2 meters for free, and then after that, you're actually making an athletics or running roll, something along those lines. And each extra success takes you another square forward. So let's roll for her, see how far she gets this turn. And I've got a 6 times a 6 is 36. So 1 success plus 3. She's going to move 4 squares. And I'm going to mark it on the map. 1, 2, 3.5. And we'll go ahead and call this 4. So here's where she is right now. Not quite halfway to the battle. Okay, declaration of intents. The ghoul is going to jump down. Quill is going to attack. Cooper is trying to get up. Lorette, I said, is trying to assist. So she's going to actually ask the spirits to animate the bones to lift Cooper or assist Cooper in getting to his feet. And Raydell is just going to try to stand up. So let's go with the heroes first. And I've got 12 for Twill, a 15 for Cooper, a 10 for Lorette, and a 10 for Radell. So right now, Cooper is going to be first in the turn sequence, and then will be Twill, and then Lorette and Radell at the same moment. And let's see where the ghoul falls in this. 1 times 6. He is coming last in the sequence. And we'll roll for the female ghoul who is running up the line. And I got a 2 times a 3 is a 6. So both of the ghouls are going last in the sequence. Cooper at 15 easily gets to his feet. 2 successes means that he lithely gets to his feet and is prepared for battle. Twill is picking up a stone and throwing it. Does he have thrown as... Oh, actually, he has whip. He is going to use his whip on the attack. And a 12 gives him 2 successes. Let's see what the range is on the whip. Whip. Skill with the whip creature. A character can attack either to injure or to entangle. I think he's going to try to entangle. Its entanglement lasts only while the user maintains tensions. Whips can reach to throwing range at 1 level more difficult. I said he got, since we didn't take into account that level of difficulty, Twill just snaps the whip at the ghoul, hoping to scare it. Next up comes Lorette. She was trying to help Cooper to his feet. I'm going to say that this means that he will get a +1 bonus on his action next turn. Okay, so then the ghoul actually failed at the roll to attack. And, as a game host, I would describe that as him losing his balance and rolling down, sliding down this avalanche of bones and stones to land at the bottom within range. That sounds exciting to me. And the other ghoul failed her roll, so she's moving just 1 space on the map, just the default 1. She is now to here. Next turn. Twill's intent is to attack with that whip. Cooper's intent is to attack, and he gets a 1-point bonus. Lorette's intent is to appeal to the anger of the dead, to attack this ghoul in a swirl of bones from the avalanche. Radell is just going to try to get up, and this ghoul's going to attack, and the other ghoul's going to run as before. So the black and blue is for the female. What do we have here? That is Twill. This is Cooper. This is Lorette. This is Radell. This is the male ghoul. And this is the female ghoul. So in turn sequence, Cooper gets that +1, so he's got a 2 times a 5 is a 10, which is going to be successful for his attack, but certainly someone's coming before him. We got an 18 for the male ghoul. There we go. I've got a 20 for the female ghoul. No one can beat that. Doesn't really matter where she is. She's not going to affect the turn sequence of anyone else. Might as well mark her down, and then I won't have to worry about her. 20 is 3 squares. So she's going 1, 2, 3, going diagonally. They each count as 1.5. So she is now here about 2/3 of the way to the fight, which continues. That was at 20. Sounds like 18 is going first. But Riedel has a 24, so he is actually probably up even before the ghoul. If I had actual players here, they could be calling out their numbers. So we've got Riedel, we've got the ghoul, we've got a 1, 5, and a 4. So the 5 is Cooper, the 4 is Twill, and the 1 is Lorette. Riedel, at his turn, stands up, and his bonus actions are wasted. The ghoul, with his 18, is 2 successes, and I should have declared which one he was attacking. Wow, I think the odds are that he would attack the fleshy one instead of the giant metal one. And let's see, I think the odds are good that he would go for Twill. And good, yes, with an exclamation point, which I'm going to read as he sticks with Twill pretty much no matter what happens. Okay, back to declaration of intents. So we know the ghoul is going to attack Twill. We know the other ghoul is rushing to get into the fight. Cooper is going to step over to see if he can get between the ghoul and Twill. Lorette is trying to summon the spirits of the dead, animate the bones. And Riedel wants to get into the fight, but that's going to be pretty complicated. So I think he will try to rush past Lorette in order to keep the light on the battle while also watching down the corridor to see if there's something else coming. Okay, roll the dice. And in space order, that's going to be Twill. That is going to be Cooper. That is going to be Lorette. That is going to be Riedel. I think I missed this die. So we've got 20. That's going to be the female ghoul trying to catch up, and we've got a 6. For the male ghoul, what is the highest here? It looks like that 20. So the female ghoul is going to go up front. Then comes there's a 15, looks like the next one. So, and that is Riedel. So he's going to try to get forward here. Then a 10 for Cooper. Come next. Twill is a measly 2, so I'm sure he is absolutely last. The other ghoul, we'll use the Ghoul King card to represent him just for turn sequence, comes just before Twill. And Lorette with a 6 will come at the same point as that ghoul. In case of a tie, heroes go first, so I will keep her in that order. Okay, this ghoul with a 20 is moving 3 spaces on the map. From here, 1, 2.5, yeah. Technically would, oh, from here is almost into the battle. Next up comes Raydell, who got a 15, so that's 2 successes. So this is a free move. Lorette lets him pass, and this would be the extra success, getting him into a good position. Next comes Cooper, who got that 15, so 2 successes on an attack with his fist. This ghoul takes 2 damage. Next is Lorette, who failed with that 6 versus her 10. Next is the ghoul itself, which got a 6 versus its 9 as a fail. And finally, Twill, who failed to hit the ghoul by a long shot. Okay, declaration of intent. Twill is going to attack, though probably that player would ask me if he could just go on the defense. But too early for that. Raydell is going to take his free move to move forward and then attack. Lorette is casting that spell. If she succeeds, then it will count as an attack against the ghoul, and Cooper is attacking. The ghoul, if it was just a normal ghoul, might run away. But this one's under strict orders by the Ghoul King and knows that he's about to have backup himself. So he will attack. The other ghoul will continue to run. Let's see where these fall out. Okay, so there's our rolls. Let's figure out the sequence. At 36, Twill is clearly at the forefront. At 24, that one's for Lorette, so she would come next. At 25, actually, the 2 ghouls come just before her. Which leaves Raydell at a 6, which is not going to be very effective, probably comes last. Lorette at a 10, and there is our turn sequence. Twill, with a 36, hits this ghoul for 4 points. So that's 6. Normally that would be enough to take out a human figure. I've put down that these ghouls have +1. So this thing's almost dead, but still on its feet. Which means that its action does take place. 25, that 9, it's a success. +2 is 3 hits on Twill. A heavy wound. Then comes Lorette, who got the 24, so she has 3 successes. That's going to do 3 more on this male ghoul. Also at this point comes the female ghoul with a 25. That is going to be 3 more squares. 1, 2, 3. She is into the battle. As she comes screeching down, leaps beside her mate. Then Lorette's comes at 25, so 3 more points of damage on the male ghoul, who is now dead and then some. Then Cooper with his 6 is exactly what he needed to hit, but his target is already down. And then Raydell at 6 moves forward but fails to attack. Next round, Declaration of Intents. Well, the adventure did say non-elf character, so the female ghoul is planning to step over here and attack. Twill, who is free from the battle at the moment and severely wounded, is going to take a free step to watch down the passageway. Cooper and Riedel and Lorette are now focusing their attention on the female ghoul, who is going to move and try to attack Twill. And it's 2 fewer dice to roll. What do I have here? For Twill, for Riedel, for Cooper, for Lorette, and for our female ghoul. This is a 30, so almost certainly up front. Will is at a 15, so probably comes next. Riedel is at a 10, which is not bad. Cooper is at a 5, which is bad, probably last in the turn sequence. Nope. Lorette is last in the turn sequence at a 1. And where did we put Riedel? He's at a 10. Yep. Wow. Okay. So first, the ghoul, who got a 30. That is 4 hits. Steps. Hits Twill for 4, which is overkill. Twill is down, and unless they can manage to get him healed up enough that he's above that 0, he's going to die. Cooper, who got a 5, misses, and Lorette misses as well. Back to the next turn. Declaration of intent. Attack, attack, attack. And it said non-elf. So I guess she's going to turn toward the statue, probably freaked out of her mind. So we'll give her a 1-point penalty on her roll. And in turn sequence, we have Riedel at a 30, which is pretty likely up front. Set Twill off to the side. If I get him off of Twill, the ghoul is at 15. Cooper is at 30 as well, so he and Riedel actually are going at the same time. And then Ghoul, and then Lorette, who fails once again. Okay, at 30, that is 4 points apiece from these two on the Ghoul. So that is 8, which takes this out this Ghoul. Before the Ghoul gets to act, and Lorette is standing there flat-footed. She has failed so badly, I think, that she has basically just exhausted the spirits of this pile of bones. Okay, we've got to try to save Will's life. Now, game system has something first called a second wind roll, which is basically you realize that a wound that you have is not as bad as you thought it was. And this is rolled against the character's brawn or will, player's choice. So I've got a 10 against Twill's focus of 7. That is 2 successes, so I can erase 2 points off of Twill's damage. Which takes him back to barely conscious. None of the rest of them have actual first aid or any sort of magical healing, though Lorette would have been able to reanimate his body, it occurs to me, if that comes to that point. So I'm going to give Lorette and Raydell just standard first aid. Actually, Lorette does have first aid. And wow, I got a 30 for her, so that is 4 levels of success. So Twill is nowhere as bad off as everybody thought he was. Or she's able to bind up the wounds well enough that they're not going to have a real effect on him moving forward. As game host, I would probably say, yeah, it's going to take you a good week to get past the soreness of that and let everything actually heal. But that's beyond the scope of the adventure. Okay, so what happens next? Well, they're still here on this mission to get Thorfinn's hammer. And they have 2 options at the moment. One of them is to explore on top of that ledge, which they have no idea what is up there. And the other one is to move forward this way, which makes pretty clear sense. The only thing that makes me wonder is whether they would consider why it took so long for the female to get there. My initial thought is that they would just be, oh, hiding up on a ledge. But it must be a pretty deep ledge. There must be a cavern up there of some sort. Probably worth checking out just to make sure there are no more ghouls who are going to pop up behind them as they move forward. Now, if I were role-playing Twill and someone else was running this, I would not want to be climbing up that ledge, even though I'm probably the best to be doing it. Though Raydell does have athletics, and as a half-elf ranger, it seems logical that he would be pretty decent at climbing. But we're talking climbing one hand holding a torch up this avalanche, so I would make that a difficult roll, so a 1-point penalty. I'm betting that as the leader of the group, he would just ask everyone to hush and listen very carefully to see if there's anything else coming. I think the odds are good that he would just have them hush. So let's see what the cards say. And yes, he does. Now let's have everyone make an alertness roll. And in this case, I would make this an uncertain roll, which is to say that the game host rolls one of the 2 dice and the player rolls the other one and tries to guess based on the success of their die, whether to trust their senses or not. We have Twill, we have Raydell, we have Cooper, and we have Lorette. Lorette can't hear a damned thing. Cooper with an 8. I'm going to say that as an assassin, especially with this sneaking ability, that this sort of listening would be good for him. So at an 8, he succeeds, 1 success. Raydell has 20, so 3 successes. And oddly enough, Twill, the burglar, fails. Cooper says, actually, I haven't said so before, but I think Cooper can't actually speak. He can read, he can hear, he can do trade language poorly because that is a lot of gestures, but can't actually speak. So he kind of pantomimes with his fists. And if they didn't know him better, they might think that he was saying something about smacking himself in the head. But Raydell rolled so well that he hears absolutely nothing. Understand that is Cooper's intent, the intent of his message. And they are going to move farther into the complex. So next up we have room 3, which is still a rough chamber, and it says fetid pool. Two small gargoyle-like statues keep watch over this section of the dungeon, at the center of which is a rank, foul-smelling, oily pool. Anyone attempting to skirt the edges will find the ground underfoot to be similarly greasy and will be required to make an easy test to avoid slipping and falling into the water. Note that this may be increased to a normal test if the character in question is also engaged in combat or similar. If a character does fall in, they will suffer no immediate effects aside from a thorough drenching and the knowledge that the pool is filled with dozens of half-rotten corpses. Furthermore, here it is clear that the area beyond the gargoyles is much less cave-like, having been hewn into a more uniform shape, and has a sturdy stone door set into the far wall, which is stuck and requires an easy test to force open. Now, I also note that while the gargoyles are clearly inanimate, they do provide a magical means of defense for the crypts beyond. As such, each of these guardians will expel a gout of flame from their open mouths should any undead creature come within 10 feet of them, each causing a minor amount of damage if the creature in question fails a normal test to avoid, or half as much if successful. However, any character that has recently taken a dip in the pool will also register as undead for the purposes of this trap, due to them being covered in slimy, putrefied water, unless they have taken sufficient measures to clean themselves beforehand. Okay, lot of text. Pool, steps leading upward, what's clearly dwarven hewn chamber back here. Let's take a look at the map I chose for this. Fetid pool. All right, so I've used these two color forms here to represent my gargoyles. I think the dwarves probably killed a dragon here, or they might have dragged a skeleton here just to scare people away. We've got a door back here, and the stairs up, which are back here someplace. So what are my heroes going to do when they see this pool? I think Twill will volunteer to slip up to check what these stairs are all about. And Raydell will go with him as backup. And Lorette is going to study this pool because of all of the body parts floating in it. Necromancer checking out the dead, with Cooper standing guard over her as well. So let's see how Twill does on a roll to get around that pool. And the adventure says that it's an easy test, so we'll just consider that average. So a straight up roll for Twill. And 12 versus Twill's 7 means that he does succeed in getting around the pool, which, by the way, I have as the pool right there. So he gets around over to this side to be able to climb up those steps. Raydell got a 3, and in D6xD6 Dungeons, each character starts each adventure with 6 drama points. Would Raydell use those? Now, being a finicky sort of elf and not wanting to look like a fool, and the pool is disgusting, I think the odds are good that he'll need to use 2 to bring this up to a 3 times 3 is a 9 to manage to use his athletics to stay out. I think odds are very good. And the card says with very good, no. So he's not going to spend those, and instead he's going to fall in the pool. Nasty, nasty pool. Lorette is studying the pool, I said, and she's using her necromancer ability, which the necromancer vocation is not just about magic, it's also knowledge of how long it takes for things to decay, wounds to the body, what the probable cause of death was. So she hears this splash and elvish cursing off to her right. And let's just see how good her roll is. And then decide. She got a 4, so she's able to discern nothing out of this. So let's go to Twill, who is gazing up the stairs into chamber 4. The question is, does he have the torch? Or did Roydell drop it into the pool and now they're all in darkness? Okay, seriously, I think Twill would have taken the torch to move forward. So I think the odds are very good. And yes, he did. All right, that's one worry off my head. Okay, so Twill looks up into this space in number 4, which we've read before. He sees that there are cracked bones around and that this is obviously where the female came from. He can see the corridor here off to the right where she would have run down. Sees the boulders up here, but I don't think he's curious enough or suspicious enough to go further up into that chamber to check things out. They haven't heard anything, and this is clearly a ghoul lair, and there's no one here. I think it's pretty obvious that he would slip back down, also because he heard the splashing and cursing behind him and sees Twill down there in the pool, which he thinks is funny, though Twill is the boss, and so I doubt if he's actually going to say anything other than stand there to watch rather than help him get out. Cooper would step forward to help Raydell out. Now we come to the does he clean himself off? And pretty clearly, being a half elf, he's not as finicky as a full elf. He is a ranger. I think the odds are good that he would stop to wipe himself off as much as possible, pour his canteen over his hands, his face, his hair, throw away his stinking cloak and hat. Odds are good. And yes, exclamation point, which I'm going to read as meaning that he actually has some clothes wrapped up in oilskin in his backpack and changes into them. Now, the adventure doesn't say anything about having to try again, so I think actually Twill probably waited around the edge of the pool to climb up here, and he is now effectively past it and won't have to roll again. Twill made his roll. Let's see about Lorette and Cooper, who I think would go ahead and move along these edges. So Lorette, she needs an athletics roll of some sort. She has it unfocused. 3 times 1 is 3, which is under the focus of 10, which works for unfocused, so she's getting around the corner. Cooper, who has his assassin's sneakiness skill, though he is huge. I'm going to make this a sneaking roll. And 3, he fails. So Cooper splashes down into the water, wades through the edge, and climbs up behind Lorette. I think the odds are poor that he would worry about cleaning himself off. And poor odds say, yes, he does clean himself off. Well, at least it's an easy thing to do. Him being copper might run down into the joints, but again, he has some oil to pour and then oil himself up really well. Which means that they get past the gargoyles with no problems at all and rejoin on the other side, where they see that stone door. How hard is it to get through that stone door? It says, sturdy stone door set into the far wall, which is stuck and requires an easy test to force open. Easy, in this case, being treated as average. Which I think we have Cooper here with a brawn of +1. I'm not even going to roll. Cooper pushes the stone door open and on we move. Into the next chamber, which is chamber 5, the burial niches. A total of 5 burial niches line the walls of this corridor, each of which contains stone slabs upon which fallen warriors once lay. Now all that remains are a few rusty lumps of iron, tattered shrouds, and broken bones. At the end of the passage is an old but sturdy-looking portcullis made from thick wood and bound with iron. Any attempt to force it open will likely fail. Okay, so let's look at the map I picked out for the burial niches. And they are actually in the next book, Destinations and Curiosities. You know, it occurs to me, I didn't show you what all rooms are in here. So we have some ruins here with a statue in it. We have, looks like a graveyard and a crypt. Here is a bridge across some water. Here's a boat. The other book, by the way, has a destroyed boat in it. Wilderness Edition. And there's this sunk boat. And you can get the idea. So I have already marked this as a spread for burial niches. There are 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as it says in the book. I've put a portcullis here. Now, so as you can see, I'm playing a little fast and loose with the book maps, but I don't think it matters. So we've got the niches. They came in this way. The portcullis is at the end, so technically it should be there, but I've used a color form fence to count as the portcullis. And then there's an entry here which leads up into room 6. All right, so my characters enter Twill, Raydell, Lorette, and Cooper. And they immediately realize that this is a burial chamber. Lorette steps forward to take the lead. Raydell does not complain. He does not like being underground for this long. He, as a half-elf and a ranger, he loves the outdoors, the wide open spaces. Twill is used to breaking into places to rob them, and Cooper doesn't care. He's with all of them. So I'm going to have Lorette make a vocation roll for necromancy just to see how this all feels to her. Are there spirits? Or is there evil laying in wait? And she got a 24, so 3 successes. She senses that the spirits here are quiet. Dwarven warriors throughout. So in a hushed voice, she asks the rest to leave them unmolested, to let them rest in peace. Again, Raydell, no problem. Cooper, no problem. Twill likes to burglarize places. So I'm imagining if I were playing him alone, as I have in the past, I know he is a rascal, and the possibility of robbing these tombs is pretty tempting. On the other hand, they are all moving on, and he's already had a very close call with some ghouls, so it's not like he's going to stay behind, and it's not like they wouldn't notice it anyway. I think the odds are very bad that he tries to steal something from here. And the card, when I say, does he? The card says no, he does not. So, onward. They reach this point. This is where they discover the steps leading, or the passage leading onward, and the portcullis. Looking at the map, I suppose it's time to read the description to Chamber 6. Statue. At the far end of this chamber stands an angelic-looking statue clasping a trident in one hand. We're going to say a hammer again. Actually, we're going to say an axe. And an empty bowl in the other. A suitable test will reveal that it is a highly stylized interpretation of Thorfinn. So, it is a hammer. In previous times, i.e. before its desecration, anyone who placed a suitable offering into the bowl, a gold coin for example, would receive Thorfinn's blessing and be cured of any minor ailments. Indeed, anyone examining the bowl's rim will see that exact inscription beneath a layer of grime. Now, though its effect is somewhat random, roll on the table below. We'll come to that if it comes to that. The group is going to want to check out this open chamber without leaving that portcullis unguarded at their back. So I think Radel is going to ask Cooper to watch the portcullis while the three of them continue into the big chamber. And is that over here? Statue, yes. So let's move that map to the side for now. And the statue. Got a color form one here that is fallen. That's how I'm going to describe the desecration. This I'm treating as just a decoration that in the floor that indicates that this is a tomb area. You can see that here is the corridor that the ghouls dug out. So, how do they proceed? Here they are, having stepped forward, flanking Lorette, the necromancer. Radel recognizes that this is clearly Thorfinn. Well, I'm going to have make an alertness roll as he scans the room in general to see if he notices the fallen boulders here, whether there's a gap in there. And we will make that what? I don't think it should be easy. We will make it difficult. It's his alertness. And a 6 means that with a focus of 7, he does not notice anything. So I can ignore that. This is not a tomb, clearly. It is clearly a chapel of some sort. The statue of Thorfinn may be there for rituals of reverence. I think it's pretty clear that the party would move forward to examine this. And I know that there is nothing here, and Quill's player would have already made the roll, which I would have made an uncertain roll. So probably cautious, but fairly certain that nothing untoward is going to happen. Do they notice the bowl? Or, more importantly, do they realize that there's anything significant about it? None of them speak Dwarvish. So the runes around the edge are not going to make any sense to anyone other than perhaps Lorette. And I will have her make a roll at... I think this should be a formidable roll. And we came up with a 4. So that is clearly a failure. So all I know is that this thing has been desecrated and it's time to leave. Back to our portcullis chamber, where Cooper is standing guard. 3 of them come back down Will would step forward, I'm almost positive, and check to see if there is a mechanism for moving it, if there are any traps. Now, I know that what's intended here is for them to figure out that the statue's arm is a lever that opens this portcullis. But they're going to try to get it open without that knowledge. Twill is checking it out, and with an 8 against his focus of 7, realizes that there's no way to open it from this side, but that it also does not look to be trapped. What with Cooper here, I think they would ask him to break it. So Cooper has a brawn of +1. That plus is going to apply then to his statue vocation. Or he might try bindings magic to unbind this. Does Cooper think to do that? And I think the odds are, wow, if I were this player, I would almost certainly say, ooh, can I use my bindings magic to try to unbind this? So we'll say the odds are good that he tries that. No, he does not. So that leaves us with him forcing it open, which against his vocation, and a +1. 2, 3, 6 is just exactly what he needs. So he gets this portcullis open. And the best thing I've found for removing these color forms is the sticky on the back of a Post-it note. And I'm going to stick it to my phone off to the side so that it doesn't get broken. Okay, this here is this doorway. So they are past the portcullis and looking into the next section. Move on past the portcullis. We now have 7 and 8. The description for 7 says that this is the chamber of the spirit guardian. Before reaching this area, the PCs will pass by a large stone door leading into Area 8, inscribed with faintly glowing runes and sigils, which proves impossible to open. However, stronger glow emanates from room 7, rising up from the ground from a similar set of sigils, at the center of which stand the gaunt and spectral figure of a female warrior, a tortured soul bound to this place by vile magic. So let's pull up room 7, the Spirit Guardian. And in this case, that is all the room that we need to represent this big space here. It's 3, 6, 7 deep. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deep, close enough. There's the doorway that they're coming through. Here is the spirit of Lenora, bound within the magical circle. I've put a color form skeleton back here lying down, partly to close off what is a doorway over here, so that we can pretend that there is no doorway. Now they have, on the way here, they've come past this stone door. You know that they're going to try to mess with it. I think what would happen is that Lorette would check out the inscriptions on this door. From what we've just read, these are not dwarven. These are instead from the Ghoul King. So I'm going to have that fall firmly within necromantic symbols. And Lorette got a 36. So 4 successes, the maximum without some sort of specialized bonuses to the roll. And she immediately realizes that these sigils were put here by the Ghoul King to prevent anyone from going any further. Now, I know that the hammer lies in this chamber just beyond here. So the Ghoul King, I guess, couldn't destroy the hammer, the magic hammer, and so wanted to keep it sealed away from anyone. Okay, that door is sealed. She says, well, we're going to have to get past this eventually, but first we should check out this chamber that's well lit with the same sort of magic. And she leads the way in with Riddell next to her and Twill bringing up the rear, with Cooper kind of keeping an eye behind them just for the heck of it. Here, very clearly, is a ghostly being, someone dead, and Lorette is certainly the one to try to communicate, although she's talking to the spirit of a dwarf. So I'm going to make this a trade language skill roll, which Lorette does have as a focused skill. As a game host running this for other players, considering how well she rolled on that doorway, I would let her get I think a 2-point bonus on this trade language roll. So her 1 becomes a 3. 3 times 3 is a 9, which is a failure. But for the players, this is pretty clearly important, so I'm sure that she would spend one of her drama points. We'll mark that a drama point has been spent to add a point of bonus along with the other 2, making this +3, so a total of 12. And she hears Lenora's story, the ghost's tale. Lenora can't remember how long she has been trapped here, but recalls being put to death by priests of the Ghoul King long ago. After that unholy ritual, it was clear that her soul was somehow bound to this place for as long as the magical wards, both the one surrounding her and the one on the door to Area 8, remain active. However, she also knows full well that that same magic will compel her to assail any intruders within the tomb, should either of the wards be breached or dispelled. As such, Lenora's motives are somewhat conflicted, as she does not wish to cause the PCs any harm, and yet she also craves to be free from this eternal nightmare. That being said, with a suitable amount of role-playing, she is willing to pin her hopes on a PC, most likely one who is skilled in arcane and or religious practices, being able to decipher the markings used in the priest's ritual and maybe discover a loophole that can be exploited. It says, see to the right. So, breaking the magical wards. Any character skilled in such matters will be able to learn, with an easy test, that both wards, i.e. the one on the door, whatever, are one and the same, and that one cannot be dispelled without the other. Be that as it may, there does indeed seem to be a slim chance of dismissing Lenora's spirit through the manipulation of certain sigils and symbols during that process. In order to do this successfully, a character will need to succeed in 3 appropriate magic-related skill tests at normal difficulty before failing 3. So, in other words, a best 3 out of 5 scenario. If this is achieved, the wards are not only dispelled, but Lenora's spirit is set free without further incident. On the other hand, if the player rolls 3 failures before rolling 3 successes, the wards are still deactivated, but Lenora's specter will be compelled to attack. Okay, once again, given how well Lorette rolled to recognize those sigils in the first place. I'm going to give her a +1 bonus in trying to dispel this magic. She asks everyone to step back. As she steps actually into the circle in front of Lenora and does her mystic, necromantic, arcane calling upon the god Vigya the Damned to help her dispel this and free this soul. So let's roll this. Here is a 2 times an 8 is a failure, and I guess we'll stick with that. I'm not going to mess with that roll. There is a 1 times a 4 is another failure. So there's 2 out of the 5. Can't have that happen. The group is starting to get pretty tense. Lorette in particular, she works really hard. This is going to be another failure. Unless she throws some drama points on it. So we're going to spend 3 drama points. She has only 2 left to make this into a 12, which is going to be 2 successes. So we've got 2 failures, 2 successes. This is the roll it comes down to. And I got a 4 times 6 is 24. So that's another 2 successes. She, at this point, after much struggle and much fear and feeling that the magic is getting away from her, she grasps it firmly in her hands and tears the spell apart, tearing away its bindings upon Lenora as well. Lenora's face suddenly opens in the widest, awesome smile as it dissipates into the afterlife. And I'm going to keep that in mind because I actually have an adventure in the underworld later on. It would be interesting if they come across the spirit of Lenora who might be willing to help them out with something. Okay. We are nearing the end of the adventure. We are at the crypt, which is in the other book. Now, this is grassy. Please ignore that or consider it lichen growing because of the water rushing through. So we have river. Suppose we'll turn this around the other way. We have an island of some sorts in the middle, the stone. And I guess we should read the text before doing anything else. This chamber is more than a little ruinous and is cut in half by a shallow but swift flowing stream. Resting atop a cracked tomb near the western wall is a dusty but otherwise intact silver trident. Sorry, it is a golden hammer, and it is on the island itself. This weapon counts as being a magical weapon when used against the undead, and it deals double damage to ghouls, but will revert to a normal, albeit golden, weapon upon the destruction of the Ghoul King. At a suitably dramatic moment, the Ghoul King, in his current weakened state, treat him as a ghast with maximum HP, will make an appearance. His coming will be preceded by a thin layer of mist that clings to the floors and chills the air. In appearance, he is much like any other ghoul, though greater in stature, with sharp teeth and claws and a long lashing tongue. Well, but he's not going to show up for a couple of minutes. So, what do our heroes do as they come into this chamber? They've come through this magical door. And I don't even need this part of the river, so we'll fold this up to make ourselves some more room. They have no clue that the Ghoul King's about to attack. As far as the players are concerned, they've come, they've fought through all of this, they've solved the magical lock of getting the spirit out of the way. So there's no climactic battle. They have found the hammer, and certainly it'll be another adventure, right? I think it's very likely that they believe that this is the end of this adventure. Do they? Yes, they do. So they come across here. They're debating who's going to pick up this hammer. It's clearly not going to be Cooper because his hands won't open. Is it Twill? Is it Raydell? Is it Lorette? And I believe that they would probably give it to Lorette. Does she have some sort of a fighting skill that she can use with it? Well, she has a small blade skill, so she's not absolutely unfamiliar with fighting. She doesn't have a hammer skill, but it is an undead item, so I believe that they would let her carry it. So they pick up the hammer, they give it to Lorette. They ask me how much experience they're getting from all of this, and I say, not so fast. There you are on the island. You've picked up the hammer, and the Ghoul King strides through the door behind you. Who dares to break my magic locks? Then he sees Lorette standing there with the hammer, and he's going to be panicked for a moment. I think everyone stands there flat-footed for just a second. And chances are he's going to flex his magical muscles to attack Lorette. Now, here's why I say chances are. I have statted him out as a lich from the Bauner Coast book. The way a lich is statted out there is you roll a d6 plus 4, I think, to find out what their focus is. That is how many schools of magic they know, and they're in a particular order. So he knows alchemy, sorcery, bindings, illusion, battle magic, elemental earth magic. And defeat him is going to take 6 points of damage all in one turn. And part of that has to be that hammer. Let's see how afraid he is of the hammer. I think the odds are very good that he fights, I believe I said. And yes, with an exclamation point. So, which I'm reading as he's going to fight to the bitter end till he's actually dispelled. So we've got the Ghoul King. I'll use the black and the red for him. I kind of like the idea of those being magical symbols. My 4 characters out here. We got the map up there to give me a little bit more room. Twill, Lorette, Cooper, and Raydell. Declaration of Intent. Raydell is a half-elf, and in this game, that gives them a bonus to archery. So he is going to string his bow this turn. That'll take an action. And then shoot at the Lich King. Lorette is going to try to hit the Lich King with this hammer, and she is chanting necromantic spells as she does so. So I'm actually going to use her vocation to roll against and give her no penalty for that. Will has that whip, which can reach to throwing range in D6 by D6. Brawling range is 2 meters, so within a square of you. Throwing range is within 20. Shooting range is within 200. And then beyond that, up to 2 kilometers, you can still see a figure vaguely and possibly use magic against it. Cooper is going to stride forward to attack the Lich King directly with his mighty bronze fists. There we go. Oh, wow, the Lich King rolled the worst possible. A 1 times 1. I'm sure he will go last. This will be for Cooper, so got a 20. This will be for Twill, so a 30. We've got a 6 for Raydell, and we've got an 8 for Laurette. Laurette is going to spend a point to make this a 12. Does her no good to spend that last point because that would bring it up only to a 16, no extra bonus. Will's in a similar situation in that he has a 30, spending a point to bring that 5 up 1 would only make it a 36, which is still only 3 bonus successes. So in terms of action order, Will goes first, then Cooper, then Laurette at 12, then Raydell, who is also going to spend a drama point to bring that up to a 12, because he doesn't want to waste a turn having failed to even string his bow. And then the Lich King. What do I have for his stats? The Ghoul King, I should say. He is a Lich, but King of the Ghouls. He has a 6. He would need 5 points just to succeed once. As a game host, I would say, well, he's going to spend 5 points to succeed, to bring this up to a 6. So he's going last in the turn, but he is going to achieve something, which I think I said was to attack Laurette. Okay, here we go. So Twill, with his 30, manages to get the Lich King's gesturing hands bound together. And let's see what it says about Whip. Whip uses the snare skill. Snare. With this skill, a character can use a lasso or net to entangle a foe at throwing range. Snares do no actual damage, but they impede the victim's actions. While ensnared, victims cannot make throwing or shooting actions, and their movement and brawling range rolls lose 2 successes. The victim can escape the snare by succeeding at a difficult action with a bladed weapon or a formidable action without. That is going to take away the Lich King's success and leave Twill with, this would have been a total of 4, leave Twill with a total of 3 successes toward the 6 we need. That includes the hammer. Next comes Cooper, who I've decided, because he's a big giant statue, that even though he can move sneakily, quietly, cannot move quickly. So instead of the normal, each success gives you an extra 2 meters of movement, it's going to be each success gives you an extra 1. So he has a 20 here, would be 2 successes. So he'll get his 2 plus 2, which, if I'm a little bit generous as a game host and let him use 2 of those for a diagonal, then gives him the other 2 to step forward. And that is his action for the turn. Next comes Laurette, who I said has spent 2 points to make this a 16, which gives her 1 success, plus 1 is 2. They are 1 success away from defeating this Ghoul King. But they haven't. So next turn, Quill's intent is to step back so that he's got an angle without hitting Cooper. Cooper's intent is to take a movement action and crush the Ghoul King with his fists. Laurette is casting necromantic magic through the hammer in order to attack, and Radel's intent is to take a step this way so as to try to shoot, and I would make that 1-point penalty to get past all of that without hitting them. And the Ghoul King's intent is to defeat this copper statue. He does have bindings magic, so he's going to try to unbind what's holding Cooper together, which effectively is treating as damage to Cooper. And our Lich King continues to roll poorly. That's just going to be a 5. We've got Twill as a 4 right now, or a 3 right now. Cooper has a 24, which is great. Radel has a 12, and Lorette has a 12. So in turn sequence, right now, Cooper's going to go first. Then Radel and Lorette go at the same time. They get to decide who goes first. Then comes Twill, and then the Ghoul King. Twill is going to spend 3 of his drama points to boost that one up to a 4 so that he'll have a 12 as well. So he will be going at the same time as these right here. And as game host, I'm going to reveal now to the players that the Ghoul King actually has 13 drama points instead of the normal 6. So he is going to spend maximum of 3 on that die to bring it up to a 4. Actually spending 2 would get him the same effect. So he will spend 2, which will give him a 12, meaning he acts at the same time as all of these 3 characters. So first, Cooper, 3 successes on the Ghoul King. Then everybody else at 12. Normally, heroes go first, but the Ghoul King, I'm going to have him go first and just say that's the big bad monster, so he's got to have some advantages. So he's got 2 points on Lorette. Then Lorette, Riddell, and Twill all get their actions at the same time, and Twill was once more trying to bind the Ghoul King's hands, and he succeeds now. Doesn't do any actual damage, but we will take that into account next turn. And then Riddell and Lorette, both with 12s, get 2 successes, which is 7, which is enough to destroy the Ghoul King. He comes apart in a pile of bones and desiccated flesh, basically just skin and bones, literally. And they have succeeded at their adventure. Now they just need to decide what they're going to do with this hammer. But that's for another day. Okay, so a little bit of post-adventure bookkeeping. Everyone normally gets 1 drama point as experience for having survived an adventure for an evening. I think if I were playing this with actual players instead of just solo, it would have taken more than 1 evening to get through. In any case, I'm going to rationalize giving them 2 points each. And then everyone would vote on who played the most dramatic role or a scene that was particularly exciting or outstanding. Radel falling into the pool was amusing, so we'll give him 1 for that. Cooper was just Cooper, and I would reward a player for playing that role even when it meant standing back and not being dramatic, playing a supporting role. The same for Lorette, for sticking to character and playing the role well. Also, a point for her so successfully having released Lenora's spirit. That I would just give, and I think the other players would probably award a point for that as well. Twill did a good job as Twill and put himself at risk a few times, which I think is worth a point. In the system, then, you can use these points to buy up skills, even potentially stats, in order to improve my abilities. I feel that this was a pretty effective experiment with a new style of solo role-playing. There are a couple of other approaches you can take. One of them is to play it brutally, and just wherever they die, treat that as a spawning point, as if you were doing a computer role-playing game. And another is just to use the adventure as a spawning point, that if the cards carry the party away in a different direction, well, so be it. But to my mind, that's not actually playing a published adventure as is. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I certainly had a good time with it, as usual. And I encourage you to support game designers and dice manufacturers and Oracle deck publishers, and even role-playing game designers like myself, so that we can continue doing the things that we're doing. Thanks, much appreciated. Until next time.